Hello again. Okay, so this paper is going to be from possibly my favorite class thus far at Phoenix Seminary. And it is solely on Ecclesiastes. It was an online class, and ironically enough, it's probably my favorite one, even though I prefer to be a traditional on-campus student. Here's some of the books. There was one by Eaton. I'll go over it in the bibliography. There's a lot. This is not a short paper. It was the final paper of the class. Very enjoyable. We got Derek Kidner. All right, The Message of Ecclesiastes. Very, very good book. Read the whole thing. Might end up starting to do a book review. Maybe have a playlist of book reviews or something. I was thinking about that because I've read quite a bit thus far. Also, there's no cover on this, but it is, well, you can't see it. It's Philip Ryken on Ecclesiastes. I believe it's Philip Ryken, not... yeah. Yeah, Philip Graham or Philip G. Ryken. It's called Ecclesiastes. Then probably maybe my favorite. It's a tie between Kidner and at the time president of Phoenix Seminary, Dr. Darrell Delhousse and Dr. Bobby Brewer. It's Commentary of Ecclesiastes for the Common Reader. This one is really, really good. Definitely we'll have to do a book review on this guy. But anyways, so those are the four. Eaton, which I don't have Eaton anymore because I rented it. And honestly, it was my least favorite of the four books that were required, in addition to obviously the book of Ecclesiastes from the Bible. But it was my least favorite. And with these two, it's a close tie as to which one was my favorite. Very, very good. Okay, let's get started. I recommend anyone taking that class, anybody, even if it's your first class, even if it's the only class, I would say take Ecclesiastes at Phoenix Seminary, in person or online. Either way, you will be benefited. Ecclesiastes is a fantastic book. It is not one of my top four favorites, but it would be fifth. And I only say that because the top four for me have always been, ever since I decided what's my favorite book of the Bible after I've read it years and years ago for the third time completely through, from cover to cover. Some people have their favorite books. I cannot narrow it down to a single favorite, but my top four are Genesis, Job, Gospel according to John, and the book of Revelation. Those are the four. Very, very interesting. And, on reflection of that, basically, depending on your view, it's really interesting because out of those four, which are my favorite, and I can't choose one above the other. That's why I ended up coming to the conclusion that I have four favorites out of the Bible. Out of those four, there's two books out of each testament, right? Two from the Old, Genesis, Job, and two from the New, John and Revelation. And ironically enough, according to most scholars, which I agree with them, it's two authors, just two, because unbeknownst to many people, Moses is attributed to writing Job. And so you've got Job and Genesis, the human author being Moses, and then you've got the apostle, the beloved apostle, John, writing, of course, the gospel bearing his name, as well as the apocalypse, right, the book of Revelation. Revelation of who? The revelation of Jesus Christ. Very important to mention that. And of course, the book of Revelation being the only book in the Bible saying you will be blessed if you read this book or hear the words of this prophecy. And it says it twice in there, towards the beginning and at the tail end. The only book that says, hey, read me and you'll be blessed. Very important. Hey, so if you haven't read it, read it. Okay? Not here to do a book review on the book of Revelation, although for fun I did read the 4 views of the book of Revelation, which I'm really going to have to do a book review video and what have you. I really enjoyed that book. And I think I read the 3 views on the first 11 chapters of Genesis. I believe that was the title of that book. I can do a book review on that as well. Anywho, let's get into it. This is the final paper from my Ecclesiastes class, which was the nomenclature is BL523, and of course O for online. So BL523 class, 500 class. And this paper dealt with, we had to identify 5 key themes of Ecclesiastes, right? Which is also known as Kohelet, because that's the title in Hebrew, is Kohelet. And I'll go into that explanation in the paper. But the bibliography, not too extensive, but again, it's not a short paper. It's not a 5-page paper by any means. Yeah, it's double that. So not too bad. Not like my hermeneutics papers, which are pretty large papers for classes, which I have not yet read. Well, anywho, bibliography. Blomberg, Craig L. From Pentecost to Patmos, an introduction to Acts through Revelation. All right. E.W. Bullinger, right? I might just read their names right through. The Companion Bible, which I often use. Okay. Let's see. Of course, Delhousse and Brewer. Personal Journal of Solomon, The Secrets of Kohelet, a commentary of Ecclesiastes for the common reader. We've got Duvall and Hayes' Grasping God's Word, 3rd edition. We've got, again, Michael Eaton's Ecclesiastes, and the name of his book was An Introduction and Commentary. I must say that out of the 4 books required for this class, 3 of them borrow from this guy. This is an older book. He's an older theologian. I don't think he's no longer with us. I think he's gone on to be with the Lord. But it is so good. All 3 books quote and cite him. They draw from him in this book. Get it if you like Ecclesiastes. Okay, we've got Grenz, Stanley J., and David Garutsky, and Cherith F. Nordling. And that's the Pocket Dictionary of Theological Terms. I can't remember why I use that, but I guess I'll find out soon. Of course, Hill and Walton's A Survey of the Old Testament, 3rd edition. I'll probably do a book review on that. It is very large, but very good read. Then we got, of course, Klein, Blomberg, and Hubbard Jr. Okay, that's the Introduction to Biblical Interpretation. Again, same thing as the last book I just said. I should do a book review on that as well. Then we've got, finally, Kidner, right? Derek. Okay, The Message of Ecclesiastes, A Time to Mourn, and A Time to Dance. Get it. It's fantastic. Then we had another book from the same guy, Derek Kidner. The Wisdom of Proverbs, Job, and Ecclesiastes, an introduction to wisdom literature. Okay. Then, of course, we've got Philip G. Ryken's Ecclesiastes, I like the title of this book. I didn't see it on the outside. That's why I didn't mention it a few minutes ago. But it's called Why Everything Matters. Really good. I'm going to quote, because I see it fit, dealing with the book of Ecclesiastes. I'm going to quote Jordan Peterson for a minute. And I actually have it printed. I have it nice cursive, calligraphy, whatever, on a nice background paper. And let's see if I can read it from here. He says, the definition of a meaningful life is everything you do matters. Just let that sink in. And the reason why I say that Jordan Peterson, it's fitting for this book and this paper is because Jordan Peterson is not only a renowned psychologist, I'm sure you've heard of him, but he's also a renowned philosopher. And the book of Ecclesiastes is wisdom literature and deals heavily in philosophy. Very, very good. The reason why I like it so much and I recommend it so highly is because being its philosophical nature, excuse me, it is very applicable. It is extremely applicable for today's life. Everyone. This gift that God has given you in this life, you're going to need wisdom. You really are. And I like to think of knowledge and wisdom, the layman's terms, the easiest way to differentiate the difference between the two is knowledge is information or data, right? And wisdom is the application of that knowledge or data. Do you understand that? That's the difference. So one is not, knowledge is knowledge, right? You have a certain understanding. You have certain information now. Now, wisdom is applying it, okay? So you have spiritual on one sense, right? Because knowledge, thoughts, and all that sort of thing, that is spiritual. That's in the spiritual realm. You cannot touch a thought. You cannot, you don't know where it comes from. You can't see it, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with the five senses. So again, and that's the self-refuting argument, not to get too philosophical, against material monism, which they believe everything is material and everything comes through the five senses. However, that statement is self-refuting because the thought itself did not come from any of the five senses. Therefore, there's more to life than just the five senses. Obviously, it's just a quick little snippet there of what you will learn in a basic 101 philosophy class. Anywho, kind of lost my train of thought there, but let's see if I can get it back. I may have to rewind it and try. Oh, well, yeah, the application of wisdom, that's what it is. So the thought is a spiritual, and wisdom is the physical. It's the application. It's the doing. It's the action of the knowledge, okay, from the spiritual. So you have spiritual and you have physical. Okay. So let's get into it. 5 key themes of Kohelet, which is the book of Ecclesiastes. Okay. Might sit back on this one. I'll try not to yell like I always say and I always end up doing. Let's see here. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm on this, got this little table here. Let's see if I can scoot up. Okay, by the way, Superman is my favorite superhero. That's why the onesie. Anywho, I know, pretty funny, huh? Talking about a wisdom book, wisdom literature from the Bible, Ecclesiastes, and I'm wearing a onesie, an adult man wearing a onesie. Welcome to the 21st century. Okay, key themes of Kohelet. The book of Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament portion of the Bible is a fantastic read and should be read thoroughly and studied. The word Ecclesiastes is Greek for preacher. The original book was written was written in Hebrew, therefore the title is originally Kohelet. So there you go, Kohelet means preacher. What makes this book stand out from the others is the harsh realities it speaks of. It is classified as wisdom literature, and much of it is philosophical. It is a journal of possibly the wisest man who ever lived, King Solomon. Unlike the wisdom of Psalms, Proverbs, and Song of Psalms, which is considered affirmative wisdom, Ecclesiastes deals with the acceptive or receptive wisdom. So does Job, by the way. This wisdom addresses the tensions in life that we cannot always figure out. Much of God's revelation breaks down into two major categories, general and special. Ecclesiastes fits in the special revelation category. These categories are ways God reveals truth to mankind. However, what makes this book so special is that it is a revelation of truth as truth is experienced. Solomon seeks and searches. He tests pleasure, considers wisdom, madness, folly, and oppression. Verses like these point to the autobiographical genre of reflection, a genre in which the author reaches conclusions via first-hand observations, deep thought, and personal experiences. In other words, Solomon had it all and has done it all, and these are the lessons learned at the end of his life. Okay. There is scripture reference here. I might not mention it, but there was already some. I gotta find a way to just upload all these. Although many view the book as extremely pessimistic and negative, it is an honest and realistic view of life under the sun. Nevertheless, the outline of the book seems optimistic. Life is given by God as a gift to enjoy. Chapters 1 through 2:26. God has a plan for accomplishing this. Chapter 3, verse 1 through 5:20. God explains the plan. Chapter 6, 1 through 8 and 15. God applies the plan to our lives. Chapters 8, 16 through 12, 14. Others may divide Ecclesiastes differently. For example, E.W. Bullinger structures the book 1. Introduction. 2. The chief good, what it is not. Chapter 1, verse 2 through 6, verse 9. The chief good, what it is. Chapter 6:10 through 12:12. And for conclusion, 12:13, verses 13 through 14. Bullinger's outline speaks of the book's philosophical nature as the good is a common philosophical term. So you're going to have to kind of have some type of knowledge of philosophy, I guess, to understand my paper. Sorry. Okay. As for the negativity in the book, Christ's words bear repeating. You are the salt of the earth, Matthew 5:13a. Believers are to be salt, not sugar, a trait that Solomon exemplifies throughout the book. Although salt tastes good, it also stings when applied to a wound. This stinging sensation indicates the first step in the healing process. Likewise, broaching uncomfortable topics and correcting others of their wrongs hurt. However, if the salt stays, it will do its job and heal. The words of Solomon are like salt. If allowed to linger in one's mind long enough, they will produce beneficial side effects. This leads to the overall purpose of the book, which is to develop character in the reader and build a practical theology for living a day-to-day godly life in a corrupt world. But the meaning of Ecclesiastes is found in the themes it discusses. These themes are the very essence of the book. The following will explore 5 key themes in Ecclesiastes that support the overall meaning of the book. Life is Havel. That is a Hebrew word. Havel. Move too much. The first key theme is Havel itself. In the second verse of Ecclesiastes, a particular word is repeated several times. The NIV uses the word meaningless, while the King James and ESV use the word vanity. In the footnotes of the latter two versions is the word vapor and the Hebrew word havel. This word is used of that which soon vanishes, because meaningless seems to contradict the very context of certain verses in Ecclesiastes 11:9, 12:14, and vapor fits the Hebrew definition of havel. It seems that the word vapor is the best translation for the Hebrew word. Out of the 73 times havel is used in the Old Testament, 38 of those times occur in Ecclesiastes. This should alert the reader that the author views this word of particular importance. Furthermore, it should cause the reader to find its significance. All right, phrase. Keeping with the second verse, the phrase vanity of vanities is a figure of speech called polytoton, many inflections, and is used for the greatest emphasis. Therefore, the phrase denotes utter vanity, or vapor of vapors, the thinnest of all vapors. This phrase is repeated at the beginning of the book, 1:2, and at its end, 12:8, creating an inclusio of Solomon's wisdom. Within these bookends contain the havels of life under the sun. Subjective. The question is life really havel? James, the author of the New Testament letter that bears his name, seems to think so. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. James 4:14. His words written during the year of or prior to his martyrdom in AD 62 echo those of Solomon's. James's life ended 1,957 years ago. Being the younger half-sibling of Christ, James was probably in his mid to late 50s when he died. 50 to 60 years may not seem like much, or they may seem plentiful, depending on certain situations and factors. It is subjective. However, when comparing 50 some odd years to 1,957, subjectivity starts to diminish. The longer time goes on, the number of years that James was on this earth seem to shrink. When one considers even greater time spans, 50 or 60 years appear minute. Across the entirety of God's vast timeline, 50 to 60 years seem inconsequential, like a vapor. All right. Second theme, death. Wise men and fools. The second key theme is the very cause of life reflecting a vapor, death. Solomon foresees his future in the second chapter. What happens to the fool will happen to me also, 2:15. He foresees death. In addition, after enough time passes, neither of them will be remembered. This causes Solomon great disdain toward life. Verse 16. Intellectually, most people can accept that at one point everyone dies, but it is something entirely different to recognize that we ourselves must die. This realization causes stress and anxiety, fear, and even depression. When Solomon understands this point, he asks, "Why then have I been so very wise?" His brief reflection on the issue has added insult to injury because he realizes he is no different from the fool. All right, that quote was second half to verse 15, 2:15. Man and beast. I guess I'm going to quote. It's just a habit. Man and beast. Solomon returns to the topic of death briefly in the poem of chapter 3, a time to be born and a time to die. Verse 2, the summary of everyone who has ever existed under the sun. When one momentous event happens, the other will certainly follow. After the poem, Solomon revisits the thought of death and observes that humanity is no better than the animal kingdom in this regard. All go to one place, all are from dust, and to dust all return. Verse 20. Death is undoubtedly the great equalizer, not limited merely to human intellect, wise man versus the fool, but even likens men to beasts. The language of verses 18 through 21 of chapter 2, chapter 2 and chapter 3, Harken back to the early years in the garden. There, man and animal lived in peace until one from the animal kingdom deceived the one from man. This resulted in the immediate death of an animal and the curse of death to man. This curse affects all those who have the breath of life in them. Man was cursed, and so was the animal kingdom. They suffered together and continue to suffer. When Adam fell, creation fell. If man is weary, creation is weary with him. Birth and death. Solomon touches on death again in the 6th chapter when he concludes the fate of the hypothetical 2,000-year-old man with the rhetorical question, do not all go to the one place? Verse 6. The context deals with the next key theme, frustrations. However, the end result is always the same, death. In chapter 7, Solomon claims that the day of death is better than the day of birth, verse 16. Here, the echo of chapter 3 too can be heard, but this time Solomon puts a value to each, holding one higher than the other. The reason for the value structure may not be obvious at first, but pondering it will reveal Solomon's wisdom. The reflecting on one's life will provide a sober reminder that one day this too will be their fate. In addition, the living can learn from the deceased's accomplishments and mistakes. Perhaps the best example of this view is Christ. The day or night Jesus was born was one of the best days ever. However, that blessed day is eclipsed by Calvary. In other words, greater appreciation is gained at a funeral than at a birthday. Unstoppable. Solomon continues to offer insight regarding death in chapter 8, verse 8. Here he admits that man has no power over the day of death. This includes kings and men of authority. Death is no respecter of persons. Aside from Christ who conquered it, no one else has power over it. In the 9th chapter, Solomon details the types of people who suffer death. The righteous, the wicked, good, evil, clean, unclean, those who offer sacrifices and those who do not, oath keepers and those who do not make vows. Verse 2. Solomon also says that a living dog is better than a dead lion. Verse 4. The obvious point is that life is preferably better than death, but the reason he offers is due to the loss of opportunity and reward. It is like graduating high school. Regardless of whether or not one made the best of those years or regrets not learning Spanish or trying out for the football team, it is over. They have no more share in all that is done under the sun. Verse 6. Returning. The final chapter is Solomon summing up his wisdom and reaching his overall conclusions. In it, he uses familiar language hearkening back to the garden as he reiterates, the dust returns to the earth, verse 7a. However, this time he adds, and the spirit returns to God who gave it, 7b. This hopeful insight can be drawn from logic and reason, because the body which is made from the elements of the earth, dust, returns to the earth as Genesis and experience teaches. Logically, the breath or spirit that animated that body ought to return to its source of origin as well. This adds another layer of depth in Solomon's wisdom, as the action of the spirit returning to God more than mimics a vapor rising up. Even in death, life is Havel. All right. Third key theme, frustrations. Toil. The third key theme is frustration. These frustrations Solomon often dubs as evils throughout the book. Early in the book, Solomon states, what does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? 1:3. This question is answered in the book fairly quickly, and Solomon uses himself as the example to find the answer. As king, he has accomplished many great works and experienced many great pleasures. Chapter 2, 2-11. The answer he discovers is that it was all vanity and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. 2:11b. He confesses to hating all his toil because he must leave it all to someone else. 2:18. Daryl DeHussey makes the quip, You cannot take it with you. There will be no U-Haul trailers following your funeral procession. This particular frustration repeats 4 more times in the book. Chapter 2:20 through 22, and chapter 4, 7 through 8, chapter 5, 14 through 16, and chapter 6, verse 7. I really need to pick a spot. Injustice. Solomon analyzes justice, and this leads to another frustration due to the corruption of it. Where justice is to dwell, wickedness is in its place. 3:16. Furthermore, the oppressors are the ones with authority, and those who they oppress cry out, but no one comforts them. 4:1. What seems sinister about these injustices is the fact that often the righteous are the ones to perish while the wicked prosper. 7:15. Solomon observes that the wicked eventually are punished, but because of the delay for justice to be executed, people increase their evil activity. 8:11. Time and chance. Another frustration of Solomon's that is worth mentioning is time and chance. This duo of unpredictability make up many of the surprises in life. Sometimes no matter how great a person's preparation is, or how much hard work is put in, their goal is not met. Solomon states that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. 9:11. The fastest runner may trip, roll an ankle, or get a cramp during the race. Being the strongest does not always guarantee victory either. The strong individual or group may be vastly outnumbered or lacking in other areas, speed, agility, experience. The smartest people may be struggling financially due to a market crash or an unforeseeable lawsuit that bankrupts them. Those with a plethora of knowledge may never get their chance to appear on Jeopardy, or may cause others to view them negatively as know-it-alls. The point is, no matter how prepared one is, there are no guarantees in life due to other factors at play, which cannot be controlled. This too is Havel. All right, fourth key theme. Fear God. Reason. Good reason too. The fourth key theme is to fear God. Solomon spreads this wise piece of advice across the book. Chapter 3:14, 5:7, 7:18, 8:12, and 12:13. The subtle message of the previous themes present the reader with the harsh reality that little is in their control. Fearing God is a logical response to this conundrum, especially when knowing one day he will bring every deed and secret into judgment. 12:14. Therefore, humanity should not only fear God, but also obey him. Ironically, fear and faith both produce the same thing, obedience. It is this divine faithfulness which makes the fear of God a fruitful relationship. Solomon notes that God performs fearful acts, so the people will fear him. 3:14. This echoes the Lord at Mount Sinai when he purposely scared the people so they would fear him, and in doing so they would not sin. Exodus 20:20. Warning. Fearing God is beneficial to man and should not be viewed negatively. After all, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 9:10. Moreover, because life is Havel, his judgment is close at hand. Understanding this, Solomon states, "Yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God." 8:12. The unrighteous will not flourish beyond the grave. Here the reader should recognize the dire warning that Solomon conveys. Due to the certainty of death and a just God as judge, it would behoove them to live righteously by fearing God. All right. Here it is, the last key thing. Enjoyment. Say what? Meantime. So far, the themes of Ecclesiastes have enlightened its audience that life is short, Death is unavoidable, life is not fair, they have no control, and they had better be afraid of God and his judgment. If so much of life is fleeting, what should people do? As bleak as this may appear, Solomon has slipped in nuggets of wisdom throughout this pessimistic outlook on life that makes up the fifth key theme. Although the wise man and the fool share the same fate, wisdom is better than folly, 2:13. A man's toil may end up in another's hand, but there is nothing better for that man than to find enjoyment in that toil, chapter 2:24. Even though death comes to all, people can improve their quality of life by removing bitterness from their heart and avoiding bodily harm, chapter 11:10. Life may not be fair, but God will judge the wicked and the righteous, 3:17. But it will be better for the righteous, chapter 7:26 and chapter 8:12 through 13. Solomon's advice is to enjoy this gift of life, which is from God, to eat, drink, work, and enjoy one's spouse, for it is God who enables those that please him to do so. Chapter 2:24 through 26, 3:10 through 13, 5:18 through 20, 8:15, 9:7 through 9, and 11:9. Conclusion. Solomon refuses to dodge the hard questions in life. His approach is philosophical and based on experience and wisdom. Ecclesiastes has a strong practical tone, and like other wisdom literature, it summons the reader to think hard, to use one's conscience and common sense, and not to avoid the most disturbing questions of life. The practical aspect comes when thoughts manifest after the reader understands what they have read, motivating the reader to take action in bettering his life. This life itself is a gift from the Creator. Life is temporary, but so are its frustrations. In the grand scheme of things, one's life vanishes like a vapor, and those moments and events in that life disappear even quicker. So take Solomon's advice and enjoy them. Life is Havel and passes quickly. At times it appears senseless, but there is one who makes sense out of it all. He alone is the one shepherd who has endowed Solomon with this wisdom. Chapter 12:11. Life is lived moment by moment. Despite being unable to comprehend all of life's queries, it is in these moments that the gifts can and should be enjoyed. Although this creation is marred and believers are looking forward to the new creation, Solomon has given counsel on how to enjoy the nasty now and now in light of the sweet by and by. History is traveling to a goal, the day of the Lord, when he will complete his purpose, redeem his people, and judge his enemies. In the meantime, fear him and enjoy the fruits of your labor, for life is quick and passes by like a vapor. Life is Havel. There you go, that's it. All right. Not too bad, about 10 pages long, but when you read it out loud, it takes a lot of time, and then the introduction I gave, it takes even longer. Anywho, cheers. God bless you, and be a blessing to others.